So, hello from Australia. And if you know people in Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, or Hobart, please send them in my direction because I have comedy shows and a play opening and things that I'm here to do that I would love to have them along to. Despite being here though, what I need to talk about this week is still, sadly, the Metropolitan Police in London. And as you may be aware, the David Carrick case concluded this week, and he's been convicted of a horrible series of sexual assaults and rapes committed while he was a serving Metropolitan Police officer and while using his position as such to coerce women into doing what he wanted and all the rest. And it's super gross. And even while the allegations were being investigated, he was still allowed to continue doing his job. And 9 previous complaints against him had been dismissed and he'd been allowed to carry on doing his job. It's disgusting. And it raises, I think, 3 questions that nobody else around the media is asking. So let's address them. Firstly, do we need a law to insist that Metropolitan Police officers declare what their nickname is? Because this guy was going around working with colleagues who used his nickname, Bastard Dave. And Wayne Couzens, who attacked Sarah Everard, he was going round, a colleague of David Carrick's, with the nickname The Rapist. And I can't help thinking that maybe it's time we had a little hunt through the Metropolitan Police and did some investigations into anybody whose nickname seems to imply that they're liable to commit serious offences. Let's get rid of Pedo Pete and Rohypnol Rob and Cressida Dick. Secondly, has the meaning of the word unprecedented changed? So a little bit of background. When organisations in positions of authority realise that they're in a lot of trouble, one thing they like to do to distract from admitting that they screwed up and that they're a disaster is commission an inquiry into what went wrong. You know, we know what went wrong. The man went around raping people. Like, which bit of this requires an investigation? But it's a way of buying time, getting the press off their backs and looking like they're doing something. Secondly, they get this special investigation done by a middle-aged woman because they know that nobody bloody listens to us regardless of how right we are and how many brilliant points we make. See also all my other videos. And lately, they seem to have picked a third tactic of getting the person who does the report to have the surname Gray. It's like the massive, couldn't be more kind of, these are not the rapey Metropolitan Police officers you are looking for. So after the Sue Gray report into Downing Street lockdown parties, we've now got the Barbara Gray report. Barbara Gray, her job title is Metropolitan Police Lead for Professionalism. And like, I've never heard of another job requiring a special individual there to make sure that you behave in a professional way. Like, hello, I'm the Dunkin' Donuts lead for professionalism. Right, what's your job? I just tell them not to spunk in the donut mix. Shouldn't they know that already? Shouldn't that be a foregone conclusion? You'd think that, but it turns out the Metropolitan Police think they can use their position to manipulate and sexually assault and rape women. And you would have thought, being police officers, they knew what the law was. But no, apparently, we need a special woman to go around and tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing with regards raping the public. Smashes everything. In Barbara Gray's report, she has said that the David Carrick case is unprecedented, which seems to suggest that despite being the Metropolitan Police lead for professionalism, she's never heard of Wayne Couzens. It's a matter of, you know, really a very, very short amount of time since Sarah Everard was brutally raped and murdered by a colleague of David Carrick's. And then, you know, we go back to last August when Anthony Paul Smith was convicted of 13 counts of sexual assault and rape on 3 teenage girls. The crimes would be committed, oh yeah, that's right, while he was a serving Metropolitan Police officer. This is not what unprecedented means. And I know that, and I know about these previous cases. I feel like Ms. Gray should be as up to speed as I am. Radical thought, perhaps have a dictionary with unprecedented in it. Thirdly, and I've asked this question before, but I've always asked it rhetorically as kind of a joke, but I want to ask it seriously and do the numbers. Question 3. does the Metropolitan Police commit more sexual crimes against women than they solve? There we go. I mean, it seems like a ridiculous question. Like, you think the answer has to be yes, right? But let's just look at the numbers. There are 1,000 complaints of rape and sexual assault that have been made against serving Metropolitan Police officers, against a total of 800 different officers. And bear in mind, there's only 34,000 officers in the Met Police. So you've got a sort of 1 in 40 chance when you report a crime that you're talking to someone who has been accused of rape or sexual assault. Now, we know for rape that the rate at which women report rape is about 1 in 10 crimes get reported. For sexual assaults, it's going to be a lower number than that. It'll be 1 in 20 or 1 in 30, you would think, because they, you know, with a lesser crime, are you really going to put yourself through the whole rigmarole of going to the police station and blah, 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 and making a statement? And you know how arduous that is going to be and how time consuming. We've got to assume that for sexual assault, it's going to be even less than that who decide to report it, often because they can't be bothered, which is fair enough. You know, you always have to make that decision when you're a victim of crime, whether you're going to say something and try and get it resolved, or whether, you know, it's just better for you mentally in terms of your well-being to just march on and get on with your life and focus on other things. We also know that Wayne Couzens and David Carrick and Anthony Paul Smith were all using their position as a police officer to tell their victims that, you know, they were using that to manipulate their victims. So it is reasonable to assume that police officers routinely tell people that they're attacking, that there's no point in reporting because they won't be believed and because they won't get anywhere with the case because they're dealing with a serving police officer. And in fact, if you think about it, if I was assaulted by a serving police officer, I would think, blimey, this guy knows how to, you know, manipulate the situation to make me look as bad as possible. He knows how to not leave evidence. He knows what kind of evidence would be admissible and what wouldn't. He knows what to say and what not to say when he's questioned. He knows what things to say about me to try and discredit me in the event that it goes to, you know, further witness statements and stuff like that. I would definitely think, you know, an extra time before I went to report something against a Metropolitan Police officer. And I've also read all these horror stories, and I know how horrifically women are often treated by the Metropolitan Police. So let's say if it's 1 in 10 rapes that normally get reported, let's say when it comes to rapes and sexual assaults against serving Metropolitan Police officers, let's say instead of 1 in 10 it's 1 in 30. That would suggest that there are 30,000 outstanding crimes against serving Metropolitan Police officers. And then let's look at the numbers on what's actually been resolved. So last year, the Metropolitan Police got to the point of like consequences or penalty. So they got to the point where a perpetrator was identified and they had actual consequences. Doesn't mean they went to prison, but it means that they got a warning or a slap on the wrist, or they went to prison or got a fine or got a community service order. Something happened at the end in 398 rapes and 1,274 sexual offences. That's a total of 1,672 cases where there were actual consequences. And we think there might be 30,000 of such crimes committed by serving Metropolitan Police officers. So at that rate, it would take 17.9 years for the Metropolitan Police to have solved more crime, sexual crime against women, than they have committed. So the answer is quite obviously no. The Metropolitan Police do not solve more sexual crime and rape cases than they commit. So the idea that the police are here to protect women is absolutely mythological. We don't need to rebuild women's trust in the police. We need to change the police so that women can trust them. Women are not idiots who don't trust the police despite the police being trustworthy. Women are quite right in seeing that the police are not on their side and are more of a menace to them. Now, while I'm on the subject, are there any other groups of people who might find that the police are putting them into more situations of jeopardy than they are helping them? Yeah, obviously. there's black people, right? And the statistics show this, and indeed the never-ending cavalcade of examples, many of which I've talked about in the past on here, show this. And guess what? Between women and people of colour in London, we are the majority, like quite comfortably, right? White men in London are a minority. I mean, as they are pretty much everywhere, because women simply outnumber men, and once you include people of colour in that calculation, we easily outnumber men, white men. So the Metropolitan Police is making the majority of us less safe. And let's be clear that if we scrapped them, that would mean officers not having badges to conduct, unpleasant stop and searches on guys going about their business. It would mean that Metropolitan Police officers didn't have badges to tell Sarah Everard that she had to be handcuffed. It would mean they didn't have the reputation of I'm a police officer, so don't bother reporting anything, so don't bother going and doing anything. And yes, of course, we would need to set up some kind of alternative system where we could, report crime and have it logged and, look at who could investigate it and so on and so forth. But the fact is that we have an organisation which doesn't keep women safe. So job number one, let's bin it. Let's just throw it away, because it does not keep the majority of us safe. It puts the majority of us in greater danger. And yeah, we can have a conversation about what kind of organisation could replace it. Perhaps we could bring in people from other areas who have a good reputation on the subject. Perhaps we could look at a different kind of security support organisation. But it is not the Metropolitan Police. We don't need an investigation into how we could regain people's trust. We need to throw it away because it is beyond repair, and it is a menace, particularly as we've seen this week, to women at the moment. See you next week.